And okay, great. So I don't know how much were able to hear me. Maybe I can quickly just repeat what I wanted to talk about. So there's regularity, and everybody's familiar with that. And that's an interesting feature of the reality. But at the same time, there are many things that feel completely haphazard, and without rhyme or reason, things pop up, happen to us, and we feel a little bit helpless there. And then we're trying to find explanations. And so, as a scientist, I'm a scientist educated in scientific research. Um, Science is always circumspect about any attempt to explain something or to find connection between two events, and is always uh, researching and casting a suspicious light on that, and is assuming, at least my understanding, the starting position assumes that entropy is prevalent, and the most likely state of any part of the world is unordered. It's kind of pretty chaotic. And now we, as a scientist, we have to figure out the explanation to say, okay, given this evidence, here's my null hypothesis, and I'm striving towards formulating a theory that would, given enough sufficient evidence, would be pretty convincing for us to say, oh yeah, this is the regular thing and obeys those laws. So I'm interested in, and from the psychological, or like we say, epistemological point of view, how do we navigate that world? At one point, at one side, we see the common sense tells us everything is regular, everything is ordered, but then, the science says, I'm not convinced that your common sense explanation is sufficient, and I want to probe. For example, you know, the common sense is telling us that the sun is moving across the sky, and it seems like an incontrovertible fact. But then science comes along and says, well, not really. Wait a minute, right? And so all of a sudden we are jolted. We're like, what else in our common sense world is actually wrong, even though it looks so right, so convincing to us? And what else is the science going to discover that is going to startle us and astonish us to say, how can it be? How can it be that the sun is not moving? Obviously, I can see it moving, right? So, do you have any thoughts about that type of a situation?
Yeah, that's a fun one. And not necessarily. I'm gonna say some of this is probably outside of my area of expertise, but some of the things that I heard in there, um, I think the science is a. Let me back up a second. Have you heard I think it's a Mark Twain quote, and every time I quote Mark Twain, I think, wait a minute, is this really Mark Twain or is this misattributed like everything else is? But common sense is neither common nor sense.
Yeah.
The thing about common sense, like something seems obvious, but actually it might not be. And that's a good question, how often that's happening to us, because there's so many things that we don't even think to question that's happening like all the time. And until somebody comes along and says, wait, do we need to rethink that? And then when there's enough evidence, then yeah, we do. And in science, like, yeah, establishing causality is like the holy grail. This causes that. That's great. Can we make a prediction then that we can, test? And if we come up with, confirm the prediction, then maybe we're onto something here. In real life, see, that's not common sense at all. Our brain is like, jump to a conclusion, didn't even let you know there was something to question or be uncertain about, and the answer seems so obviously true. um, that, yeah, for me, one of the things that I always try and teach my students is the value of um, being comfortable with a certain degree of uncertainty, um, which is really hard because it feels uncomfortable, um, and it's not it's not sustainable to be uncertain all the time. So the question is, when can you be uncertain? When is the more important time to be uncertain? And there are certainly some times where that's true. I'm rambling now here again, but you
No,
also
you're
said,
not.
sorry.
No, no.
Um,
You're doing great. I like what you're saying.
It's just a stream of consciousness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the there's a lot of information out there, and we're constantly trying to make sense of it. So little bits of it come in through our senses, and our senses, even without our awareness, have to pick and choose what it's going to pay attention to. And then some of that gets in, and then the brain needs to make sense of it. And then to make sense of it, it uses what it already knows, which may or may not be true, but hopefully it's been good enough to keep you alive this far. Um, then it uses that to make patterns and sense of things and have it fit. And if it doesn't fit, then oftentimes our brain again just jumps to a conclusion and lets you think that it was obvious and certain the whole time. I love watching videos of animals being shown magic tricks.
Mhm.
Like, you ever seen a dog see a magic trick?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, what? Um, because it violates everything they know about how the world works, and you can see it on their face.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I love that about magic, right? It does it for the rest of us too. But imagine how many times this might be happening and we're not even aware. This is how I think the world works. And when something violates that is when I start to question it. If it's in line with how I think the world works, then I don't even stop to think to question, even though it might be completely wrong. Um, for me, there are times where it's more important to be aware that your brain might be making these errors, like making important health decisions. So, for example, one of the things I constantly hear whenever I communicate about like alternative medicine, I tried it and I felt better, right? Like, that is absolutely solid evidence in their mind. And it makes sense. This happened, then this happened. So it must be the pattern is real. Um, But if you're making important health decisions based on I tried it and felt better, there's a reason we need science. So when I was designing my class, one of the things I realized was when we teach science, we don't usually start with why we need science to begin with. Why isn't I tried it and I felt better sufficient evidence? Because we can fool ourselves. And until you know that you might not be feeling better because of what you took, right? There might be something else at play, and there might be serious stakes at this, serious consequences for making a bad decision. Then it's best to withhold. And then, okay, let's look at the evidence. How do we establish causation? Well, in science, the best way we can do that is randomized, double-blinded controlled trials. Why do we need to randomize? Why do we need to blind? Why do we need to double blind? All of that is to try and correct for the many ways that we can fool ourselves. And if the evidence from those randomized double-blinded control trials comes back and says, you know what, this is not effective, then Occam's razor would suggest that your personal experiences might be fooling you. Now, if you want to make the best decision, where do you want to, which conclusion can you have the most trust in?
Yeah. So, you know, some people may feel that thinking this way and having this kind of a sober approach to life could be a downer or could be a party pooper,
Mm.
right? But then some other people, including myself, may feel this as being emancipating
Mm-hmm.
or hopeful or giving you better outlook on your own existence and life. So it's interesting how it hits people differently. Um, and I think it's kind of, in a way, the key word in my mind is emancipation. Because if you look at beings when they're born, be it insects or animals or humans, there is a period where you need to emancipate yourself biologically, learn how to walk, learn how, e- even much less complex animals have some this early period where they need to somehow survive and grow to the level where they are fully functional adults. But in humans, I think there's an extra step of growing up. So once all body functions, everything is, you can survive, you can find food, you can find drink, you can find shelter. There's a mental emancipation, which I think is a crucial thing, and that's where science helps, is growing up to abandon wishful thinking. And like you say, abandon the double standards where I'm super, super skeptical uh, when I'm denying science, but I'm super, super gullible when I'm peddling my pseudoscience,
Mm.
because that kind of uh, I think now you may disagree, but I think as we go through life, if we really truly turn the searchlight inwards and when we reflect and we keep monitoring how we function, there's a constant arithmetic or constant calculation with regards to gain loss. Everything happens to us is being measured by, is this gainful to me, or is this thing going to cause me to lose something? And I think that's the bedrock of wishful thinking, where now I'm in favor of distancing myself from things that I feel may take away something I like, and then associating myself with events and things and situations where I think I may gain. That might blind us, and it's almost like you're drunk, right? And I see science as a good way of sobering up and saying, okay, maybe what I think is actually good for me, not that good for me, right?
Yeah. Certainty feels good.
Yeah.
Um, it certainly feels better than not knowing, and it can be really uncomfortable to admit that you were wrong. Um, but also like, so when you were talking about the patterns earlier, um, and what I was also getting was a sense of control. So like, um, a lot of superstitions come from finding false patterns, and then superstitious behavior is an attempt to exert control in a situation where we otherwise are powerless. And being powerless also doesn't feel good. And so, if I wear my lucky socks, then I win the game, right? Or if
That-
I whatever ritual it is, and then I do this, even if it doesn't work, it made me feel like I was in control. Um, and there is a certain it's uncomfortable to be uncertain, and it's disconcerting to be powerless, to feel powerless. To there's a certain level of, I'm not coming up with the right word, but when you feel like life events are completely out of your control. And there's actually there does seem to be a correlation between feelings of powerlessness and superstitious and religious beliefs. And it makes sense. If I don't feel like I have control over what happens to me, then I feel like I can get control by doing these various things. Um, it's a hard thing to shift that viewpoint. I know for myself, I agree with you. When I realized that um, I didn't know, or that sometimes shit happens, then it's liberating. It's it wasn't it's almost like there's pressure in being right all the time and being in control all the time. And when you realize you don't have that, to me it's okay. But I suppose everybody has to come with that in their own time. The problem for me as a critical thinking communicator and educator is is my goal is to empower people with the kinds of thinking that can actually benefit them and help them make wiser decisions. But in order to do that, it takes a lot of time and effort. Like learning how to think is hard, and turning it on is even harder. And then the kinds of dispositions, and getting to the place where it's okay for you to give up the control and the having to know everything. Um, but in my mind, that is the best way to get closer to actually having control over a situation, is being able to recognize what is, think through it in the best possible way, use the best available evidence, and then come to a wiser decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like you say, the superstitions, I think maybe also be fueled by the feeling of importance, self-importance. And what I find the more deeper I go into science and learn, and it's amazing, especially recently, there's been so many breakthroughs. As Lawrence Krauss says, there's one talk where he talks about something out of nothing. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. And it's amazing because it really broadens your horizons. But the moral of the story at the end of the presentation is that we are so insignificant. And that's such a liberating uh, realization. If you think you're very significant, you're going to be having a tough time
Mhm.
going through life. The arrogance, the self-importance, the has to be my way. It is very debilitating because it cannot be your way. You could be the Roman emperor and still is not your way. Nothing is coming your way, right? But I find it rational thinking and critical thinking and the dynamic the exploration where you don't view world as a static preordained situation, just unfolding something that we don't know what it is. It's very liberating. And yes, the world, up until recently, the world was viewed as a static preordained situation where we were thrown into that and now we have to swim. But that's not how it is. And it only recently, relatively speaking, let's say it's 100 years or 150 years, have we opened up the possibility that this world is not just a static Newtonian, where all these like mechanical bodies are, rotating and revolving and like a billiard table. So that I think is the good, hopeful, and positive aspect of learning more about science and realizing how insignificant we are. And it may feel negative when you say that. Well, what do you mean I'm insignificant? But it's very liberating when you actually feel it.
Yeah. So Neil deGrasse Tyson has a quote, something about, and he may have gotten it from Carl Sagan in the original Cosmos, but how we're made of stardust, right?
Yeah.
Um, Bailey Harris, do you know who Bailey Harris is?
No.
I think she's 19 now, and she's written four books for kids. They're in a series that she calls Stardust.
Mhm.
And the character's name is Stardust, and how we are made of stardust. So to her, she heard that we are made of stardust, and it meant that we were actually really special in that light. Her latest book is with about Darwin and his trip to the Galapagos. And I think about Darwin's quote, how he ends Origin of the Species. There is grandeur in this view of life. Like, it can be special as it actually is. It doesn't have to be special in that, like, my life is preordained in the center of the universe. I can be a part of something that's bigger, and that is still something really special.
Yeah. Yeah. But I find that the what's the word? The distinction seems to split around static versus dynamic, the mindset. And when I was younger and less educated, I had a pretty static world of the reality. And I'm thrown into a preordained situation. But it takes a lot of thinking and a lot of, education and talking with smart people to slowly open up your mind to the fact that no, it's dynamic, it's impermanent and constantly changing. There's nothing abiding that you can hang on to and say, okay, I found the Holy Grail and now everything is cool. No. So for some people, it sounds very scary. For some people, it sounds very happy place.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of people in my life who are religious, and it to me, it boils down to that. It boils down to wanting to have something be a bigger and like made in the light of something more special than what it is. I guess I don't know what the answer to that is. And also, I think that there's a desire, a wishful thinking, for um, wanting to see loved ones or something.
Yep.
And And is the thing like wanting something to be true does not make it true. Um, it could be true. It would be really nice if it were true. But all I know for sure is that I have this life,
Yeah.
and there are things that I can control in this life. And so I actually think that this view of life puts more responsibility on me in this one to make the most of this and um, to be the best person that I can be, as opposed to hoping for something when everything is over. This conversation got really deep. I did not mean it to. It's your fault, I'm pretty sure.
No, no, it's your fault. It's not my fault. I blame you. But basically, if I may just bring back myself to this,
Please
the,
do.
the title of my book, tentative title, is "Emancipate Yourself by Abandoning Wishful Thinking."
No.
And I feel like we can emancipate ourselves, but so long as there is wishful thinking, we can't. We are ensnared in wishful thinking, and it's really pulling us down. That's how I feel. So the more I can be free myself from falling the victim of my wishes and how I, you know, wish, like you said, this to be true and that to be true, the more enslaved I am, and the more suffering and grief and anxiety just floods my life. But if I get to the point where I can have the strength to grow up and abandon that wishful thinking and just embrace whatever is going on, then all of a sudden the anxiety melts away and you're kind of just swimming in it, and you're welcome whatever comes to your way next. And one way or another, you're going to be rolling with the punches. I think that's
Catch
sorry,
up? You
sorry.
mean you will catch up with us?
I don't know, but that to me is the art of growing up. So I don't think we grow up by the time we hit 18 or 21. I think we keep growing and growing up and growing up. But the this feeling of meeting people whose minds are like yourself are keen, objective, not flooded with your own wishes and your own selfish, narcissistic, whatever. But you can rise above your own, whatever people shove on us as a criteria for success. And unless you do this, this, and that, then you're a failure. And obviously, such societies are built in such a way that they want to control us. And the best way to control us is to make us feel inadequate. Whatever it is you're doing, you're inadequate, right? And you better change or better obey this and that, right? But we can rise above that. We don't have to belong. I think this pressure to belong is engineered. I don't think it's real. So the more I meet people like yourself and other smart people the more I see that I don't think you belong anywhere. You're just a free thinker. You don't have to be part of this clique or that parochial, whatever it is, right? That to me is very exciting. That to me is very promising. And that's why initially I'm like, no, I need to connect with you. I need to see how can I amplify because I think your message is brilliant and it's coming at the right moment, 2025, where we are seeing all the erosion of critical thinking and the favoring of this kind of tribal us versus them. We are united in hate. We're united in like ridiculing and punching down. It's ugly, right? And
Yeah.
we don't need to degrade ourselves like that, right? So I'm a big fan of your program, and that's why I wanted to, see what I can do to amplify it, right? And especially because you're an educator, I think like you say, the earlier the better.
Mm.
And I don't know what your batting average is on on teaching that. It's probably, somewhere
Mm.
not hitting in all the, points, but keep going, right? That's all you can do.
Well, thank you. I honestly, that's very kind, and I try. I don't know if I succeed, but I certainly do try. I would say I'm a work in progress. I have so your book. I'm writing my first book at the moment. This is a process that, well, let's just say it is way more. I thought naively that the hard part was going to be writing the book, but apparently there's all kinds of stuff around it that I was also not prepared for. And writing the book is wow. How's yours going?
Like I said, I started in around Christmas time last year because I had some free time, and I pushed to the level of 10 chapters, pretty short chapters, and then I felt like, okay, I don't want to do any kind of parthenogenesis, and self. So I want to go out and start looking at what other people are thinking in that regard. And then, of course, I opened the floodgates. There's so much. Of course, I'm deeply in love with Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Lawrence Krauss and Peter Atkins, and these people just blow my mind. I can spend days just watching them. It's insane. But like I said, watching those things and AI algorithm monitoring me keep sending me other people, and that's how all of a sudden I discovered you, and like, wow, this is also amazing, right? And who knows who else is, so we need to form some kind of a community or a guild or whatever you want to call it to support each other, right? And to amplify that message, and to because it looks pretty bleak. If people who don't know you may think, oh, this is pretty bleak, we are losing science, we are just kind of retreating to some kind of dark ages where we are abandoning vaccines, we are abandoning medicine, we are going back to leeches, or bloodletting, or well, who knows what else. So,
Well, some people are,
sorry, what?
and some are.
Yeah. So that's kind of scary, right? And then you think about young people who are just come fresh into this world, and all they see is that. Well, that's pretty, bad news for their formative years. They learn that, oh no, the Earth is flat and blah blah.
You are familiar with the Center for Inquiry, right?
No. Oh,
Oh,
oh, I'm ashamed now. Sorry. What?
oh, you will love them. The Center
Okay.
for Inquiry, their flagship publication is Skeptical Inquirer.
Oh, yeah, I know
Um,
skeptical. I know skeptical. Yeah.
so Center for Inquiry, they're actually I think Carl Sagan was one of the original
Hmm.
founders. They are celebrating 50 years next year, and their 50-year anniversary, they have a conference every summer, SciCon. It's usually in Vegas, but it's at their home in Buffalo, New York, next summer. And there you will find lots of people who are all interested in the same sort of nerdy and wonderful things that we are.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I would love that.
I say
Yeah,
that I'm also speaking to, so like, yeah, shameless plug, but do come. It's fun.
sure. Uh, Speaking of which, I don't know, because I just wanted to quickly do your Google you, and there's a lot of material, but I'm shocked that you don't have a Wikipedia page. How is that possible?
Mm.
I think we
And
should we should start that.
I, it it's a goal. We'll see. I would like
How do
one.
you how do you get there? How can I help?
Oh, I think it's one of those where you have to be noteworthy enough. So I just need to be more noteworthy.
How long have you been doing this?
Oh,
Public?
years,
5 years?
5. Yeah, I think it started right at the pandemic.
It's about time. I think you're getting there. We need to get you there.
Mm.
People need to be able to.
Well, the book comes out next year, so hopefully that will
Hmm.
help.
Hmm. You have the publisher. Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that go? Was it hard to find somebody who would be willing to publish your book, or?
Well, so the first step was finding an agent,
Mhm.
and that was a process I wasn't prepared for. So I found an agent, and then pitched the book to some publishing houses. The original book was called How to Be a Charlatan,
Mhm.
because I teach my students how to not fall for misinformation by having them create it. And so I have all these fun assignments and stuff where I have students, you know, play charlatan. And then the publisher bought the book, and then it is changed enough it is now a field guide to misinformation. It's with Alcove, which distributes through Penguin. So I have a lot of hope for it. But it's my flavor on misinformation in that it starts with understanding ourselves and why we might be vulnerable to different kinds of misinformation, and then a basic like primer on the kinds of techniques that are common in different types of misinformation, and then broad information and science. So the different kinds of misinformation, and then what characteristics of reliable information look like and how to find those. And it's me, so I use lots of like fart jokes and cat jokes and silly stuff because, if you I learned early on if people are triggered, they're not going to hear what you have to say. And there is obviously a lot of important misinformation out there that is really important to cover. But if I start with that, then you're not going to learn the skills that I'm trying to teach. So I try to take the I call it a training wheels approach to teach the skills and let you understand how this stuff works on your own so that you can be empowered to make your own decisions.
Brilliant. Yeah. I can't wait to see the book next year, right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, great. So since I don't have the paid Zoom, we have 8 more minutes left. Let's maybe make the best use of it.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you would like to broadcast in the next 8 minutes?
Next 8 minutes. Oh my goodness.
No pressure.
The only thing I would say that you brought up so far, and I agree with you, as I said, 1,000,000%, is we need to be getting this more in schools.
Yeah.
I actually would love to hear more about what people think and suggestions on how to do this. Um, the the issues, as I see them, are that misinformation tends to not be in a lot of standards. A lot of the ways critical thinking is taught is that problem solving definition of critical thinking that I was talking about, as opposed to the better thinking version. And teachers have their plates full. They have a lot of stuff they already have to teach, and this is just like adding something else to their plate. I do have curriculum and materials that I would love to help get to educators, and I'm not even saying that I'm the only solution here, so that's not my point. But how can we reach more students in schools?
Okay. That's a critical issue to to address. I would say, in my opinion, from my experience dealing with all kinds of situations and managing people and working the field of engineering and whatnot, um, it would be really great if you could emphasize the teaching, expose logical fallacies. This is where I see a lot of people trip and not recognizing a logical fallacy and then taking the wrong turn because they did not realize, oh my God, this is actually erroneous. And so raising that awareness or cementing this list of logical fallacies, you have the list on your site somewhere, which is not a complete list, but it's a good list. It's a curated list. It helps a lot. But I see a lot of people falling for these fallacies, hook, line, and sinker, and not realizing that there's the drowning in it. So that would be, I think, in my mind, the top of the list for any
Mm.
students. Just give them really solid, however, with fart jokes and cat jokes, it doesn't matter, but something that sticks so that a person can moving through life can say, oh, this is appeal to authority. This is appeal to, all these things. I see the ruse. I see through the trick, right? That's, I think, something that I see missing a lot when I walk around, and myself included. I also fall for these fallacies. And then later on, it's like, oh, what was I thinking?
Well, they're everywhere, to be fair. And
Yeah,
you're right,
yeah.
there's a trillion of them, and they go by a million different names, and there's all kinds of sub fallacies, and that's a hard thing. I try to distill it to about a dozen, but I think, especially in health, wellness, and diet, it's appeal to nature, which
Mhm.
is really one for it's a hard one for people to understand apparently, because even when you explain, well, that's an appeal to nature, just because it's natural doesn't mean that it's better or it's safer. Um, but yet the next food package says that it's all natural, and it's like, oh, okay, this must be better. Um, So that is a hard thing. But again, I would say that a lot of educators aren't taught logical fallacies, and the fallacies aren't in the standards. So how do we get educators to teach them?
Yeah, like I'm originally from Europe, and when I was in high school, we had logic as a subject, and you had to pass, right? That was mandatory. We also had philosophy.
Where
Yeah,
are you
in
from?
I'm from a country that's no more called Yugoslavia. Now it's split into several smaller countries. But back when I was a student, we had a really classical education. We were learning Latin, uh, philosophy, logic, all these like really hard kind of teaching you how to think, hardcore, rational tools, uh, which helped me a lot, because then
Yeah.
I moved on. I studied biology, and then when I graduated, I went into ecology study, evolution, you know, and then I really got into big time into philosophy of science, Karl Popper and all this, falsifiability and all these things, which is really liberating. And all these things you're talking about. That's why I was so excited when I saw you talking about this thing. Like, yes, this is it. This is what doesn't get mentioned often, or sometimes not ever. And like Richard Dawkins said, like the first thing they should be teaching in biology is evolution, not anatomy and all that. Start with evolution, and then you can ease into other things, physiology, biochemistry, etc. Instead of the other way around, evolution is taught at the very end.
Right, doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah,
actually, I find that a lot of scientists aren't even taught philosophy of science to the point where like we just expect them to take it up through the ether. And the end is like I've been around scientists and said, well, what's the difference between a theory and a law? And they get it wrong.
yeah,
And it's one of those like that's really basic
yeah,
stuff,
yeah, yeah,
but we don't teach it. We don't teach it directly for sure. And so, yeah, I almost think a philosophy of science course should be required for all of our science majors.
absolutely,
Very,
absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you had my turning point in life was when I read a book by Gregory Bateson, Steps to an Ecology of Mind. Have you read it?
no,
I highly recommend it. Gregory Bateson, very eclectic.
I didn't know you were an ecologist.
Yeah, I did a hardcore scientific research for 5 years, and I went heavily into statistics and mathematics and simulation, computer modeling. But then because I could not make a living doing that, I moved into software engineering.
Okay.
So I had to abandon. Now I kind of regret. I wish I remained hardcore scientific research, because that to me, is the best. But it's very hard to make a living unless you're lucky to get somebody, blah blah blah. Not to, but you have to somehow pay the bills, right? So when got married and we started making family, and we realized no, we can't survive on the meager whatever scientific research assistant, blah blah blah, right? But yeah, that's my kind of first infatuation in life, is this scientific research and um, hardcore evidence, empirical evidence.
I also like, as a fellow ecologist, the kinds of systems-based thinking and all of the different like interconnectedness between things and it is such a hard thing to teach, but it is so valuable
Yeah,
to be able to look back and think, okay, what are all the different parts of this? How does something here impact something all the way over here? Um, and that is a valuable form of thinking, no matter how you apply it. I'm partial because I love ecosystems, but systems are everywhere.
yeah, absolutely. So that's why Gregory Bateson, Steps to an Ecology of Mind. You'll be blown away.
All right. Well, we need to stay in touch because we have a
Yeah,
lot in common, and I really appreciate your time.
awesome. Let's get together soon again when you have some time. I appreciate your time. And let me know how your book is going.